I've always thought of myself as an ordinary person, living an ordinary life. My name is Natalie, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the good girl in my family, the one who kept her head down, smiled when needed, and avoided drama. But the truth is, my life was anything but ordinary. Not because of me, but because of my family and the secrets they've buried so deeply that even I didn't know they existed. I lived in a small, quiet suburb in the Midwest. My apartment was cozy, cluttered with books, throw blankets, and half-finished mugs of coffee. And for the past 6 years, I'd been sharing it with Sophie, my best friend. Sophie wasn't just a friend. She was my anchor, my confidant, the person who somehow knew all my little quirks and still loved me anyway. We met in college and hit it off instantly. Everyone assumed we were sisters in spirit, but we were too young and naive to realize that fate had a far stranger plan for us. Sophie had this infectious energy. She could walk into a room and make it feel warmer, lighter. I, on the other hand, was quieter, careful, observing everything, often too cautious to take risks. But together, we balanced each other out. We laughed until our sides hurt, cried when life got heavy, and shared secrets no one else could ever understand. Or so I thought. My own family, well, they were complicated. My mother, Linda, was always perfect on the outside, polished, organized, always in control. But behind closed doors, she had a way of making you feel like nothing you did was ever good enough. My father, Mark, worked long hours and seemed emotionally unavailable, though I know he cared in his own way. My older brother, Jason, was ambitious, charming, and somehow always the favorite, whether he deserved it or not. I often felt invisible, a shadow behind the life of everyone else. Even with all that, my apartment with Sophie was my sanctuary. At least, it used to be. It started with something small, a picture. I can't even remember why I was rifling through an old box in my closet that night. Maybe I was looking for something to distract myself from the endless monotony of work. But when I opened that box, a single photograph fell out, creased and yellowed at the edges. It was of a baby, dark-haired, wide-eyed, and next to the baby, a woman I recognized immediately, my mother. My heart stopped. I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to make sense of it. The baby looked familiar, too familiar. My first thought was that it was probably a cousin or someone else from my extended family. But something about the baby's eyes, the same greenish hue I had, the same wide, curious stare, made a chill run down my spine. I shoved the photo back into the box, trying to shake the unease. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just imagining things. But that night, as Sophie and I laughed over a mug of hot chocolate in our tiny kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Over the next few days, little things started catching my attention. Sophie would mention her childhood in passing, her parents, her early life, and I began noticing inconsistencies. Small things at first. A name she never mentioned before, a town she said she grew up in that sounded oddly familiar. Then bigger things. A family heirloom she owned that looked suspiciously like something I'd seen in my mother's closet. I tried to dismiss it. Natalie, you're imagining things, I told myself. Sophie's your best friend. That's all. But deep down, a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered something I didn't want to hear. What if Sophie isn't just your best friend? What if there's more to her story and more to your family than you've been told? I didn't realize it then, but that photograph was just the beginning. That one faded image would pull back the curtain on years of lies, secrets, and betrayals. Secrets my mother had buried so well, I never imagined they could exist. And the most terrifying part, the closer I got to the truth, the more I realized that the person I trusted the most, Sophie, might be at the center of it all. But I didn't realize that was just the beginning of the nightmare. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake on my side of the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Sophie, examining every word, every gesture. My mind was spinning. And for the first time in my life, I felt that gnawing, paralyzing fear that everything I thought I knew might be a lie. The next morning, Sophie woke me up with her usual cheer, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. She laughed about a dream she'd had, tossing her hair back, completely carefree. And I wanted so badly to join her in that world, to pretend everything was normal. But deep down, I knew it wasn't, because the truth was closer than I could ever imagine. And I had no idea just how far my mother had gone to keep it hidden. I couldn't stop thinking about that letter in the attic. My hands still shook whenever I looked at it, and every memory of Sophie suddenly carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I needed answers, but not just from Sophie. I needed the truth from the one person who had always controlled what I knew about my family, my mother. I waited for the weekend, knowing my dad would be out of town on a business trip. I found her in the kitchen, meticulously arranging fruit on a platter like she always did, her calm exterior hiding the storm I was about to unleash. "Mom," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "can we talk about something from the past?" Linda looked up, her eyes sharp, calculating. "The past? Natalie, you always want to dig through old memories. Why can't you just focus on the present?" I swallowed my fear. "I found a letter in the attic about a baby, a girl who was adopted." Her face went pale, her hands tightening around the edge of the counter. For a moment, she didn't say anything, and that silence cut deeper than any words ever could. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally, her voice too controlled, too practiced. I took a deep breath, refusing to back down. "Mom, please, I need the truth. Was there a baby? Did someone in our family give up a child for adoption?" Her eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before. Fear, guilt, maybe even shame. And then finally, a sigh. The kind of sigh that carries decades of secrets. "Yes," she admitted, almost in a whisper. "There was a baby. A daughter. I I had to give her up. It was complicated." I felt my chest tighten. Complicated? That word seemed so small for what I had just discovered. Who? Who was she? Where is she now? Linda looked away, her lips pressed together. She I don't know where she is. She was adopted by a good family, and I couldn't tell anyone. Not your father, not anyone. It was supposed to be private. The room seemed to shrink around me. I struggled to process it all. A part of me felt betrayed, like my entire life had been built on a lie. And then a thought hit me, chilling and undeniable. Sophie. Could it really be her? The coincidences, the similarities, the strange little details from her childhood. It all made sense now. I wanted to ask, to accuse, to demand answers, but something stopped me. I wasn't ready. I needed proof. And if Sophie really was my sister, how could I even begin to tell her without destroying everything we'd shared? Over the next few days, I became a careful observer. Every word Sophie said, every story she told about her childhood, I filed away in my mind. I even started comparing dates, towns, and names. The more I looked, the more the puzzle pieces fit. The lullabies, the playgrounds, the favorite snacks. It wasn't just coincidence. It was deliberate, though none of us had known it at the time. One evening, as we sat in our living room watching an old movie, Sophie laughed at something ridiculous on the screen. I studied her without meaning to. The way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the exact same way my mother's eyes did in photographs from years ago. My throat tightened. Are you okay? She asked, suddenly serious, as if she could sense my thoughts. I forced a smile. Yeah, just tired, I guess. But I wasn't tired. I was terrified. Terrified of what I might uncover next. Terrified that the truth could destroy the bond I cherished most in the world. Terrified that everything I believed about my life was about to change. And I didn't realize it then, but my mother's secret was only the tip of the iceberg. Because there were things about Sophie, things she didn't even know about herself, that were about to surface in ways I could never imagine. That night, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I realized that my life, and Sophie's, was about to be turned upside down. And the worst part, I had no idea who I could trust anymore. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope. Every laugh, every shared memory with Sophie carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I tried to act normal, to laugh along with her, to pretend nothing had changed. But inside, I was constantly calculating, analyzing, searching for proof without tipping her off. I started dropping subtle questions into our conversations, careful not to be too obvious. What was your first birthday like? I asked one evening as we sat on the couch, our legs curled under blankets. Sophie shrugged, smiling, and told me a vague story about a party with balloons and a cake. Did your parents ever take you to the park a lot? I asked, watching her face closely. She frowned slightly, like the question stirred something buried. Yeah, there was this little playground behind our old house. I loved that place, spent hours there. I felt my heart skip. The playground. I'd seen pictures of it. My mother had always talked about it when I was little. The swings, the sandbox, the same cricket slide in the corner. And then came the night of the dinner party. Sophie and I had been invited to a small gathering at a mutual friend's house. While everyone mingled, I noticed her instinctively avoid a corner of the room, her hand brushing against the wall as if seeking comfort. I followed her gaze and realized she was staring at a framed photograph on the wall, a photo of a baby with the woman I instantly recognized as my mother. Sophie froze. Her smile faltered, and for a fraction of a second, I saw something in her eyes. Fear? Confusion? Recognition? I couldn't tell. She quickly looked away, masking it with a laugh. But the seed of suspicion had sprouted. Later that night, back at our apartment, I couldn't contain it any longer. Sophie, I began, cautiously, there's something I've been noticing about your past, about your childhood. She looked at me, eyes wide. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. All these little things, your stories, your memories, they're familiar, too familiar. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't shake the feeling that you're connected to my family in ways we don't understand yet. Sophie laughed nervously, a little too quickly. Natalie, that's a stretch. We've been best friends for years, okay? We've spent a lot of time together, that's all. But I could see it in her eyes. Doubt, hesitation, and my suspicion grew. What if she knew more than she was letting on? What if she had always known deep down, but didn't want to face it? Over the next few days, I began observing her more closely. How she reacted to old family stories, photos, even the way she reached for certain dishes in the kitchen. Small, subconscious habits that mirrored mine exactly. I felt like a detective piecing together a puzzle, and the more I looked, the more the edges of the picture became terrifyingly clear. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but I hesitated. Part of me feared destroying the friendship we'd built, and part of me feared what the truth would do to her. And so I stayed quiet, watching, waiting for something, any slip, any clue that would confirm what my heart already feared. Sophie was not just my best friend. And then it happened. We were cleaning out some old boxes in the apartment when Sophie pulled out a small, worn bracelet. She held it up, inspecting it, and my stomach clenched. It was identical to one I had seen in my mother's jewelry box. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophie hesitated, twisting the bracelet in her hands. I I don't remember. It's from a long time ago. My adoptive parents gave it to me. I nodded slowly, but my mind was racing. That bracelet, it wasn't just a coincidence. Every thread, every detail, every shared memory was pointing to the same impossible conclusion. And as I watched her, laughing at some memory from college, I realized something terrifying. The closer I got to the truth, the more fragile everything we had, our friendship, our trust, even my own sense of self would become. I didn't know it then, but the moment that bracelet appeared was the first real crack in the life I thought I knew. And that crack was about to turn into a chasm. I couldn't stop thinking about the bracelet. Every little coincidence, every shared memory, every strange alignment in our pasts had built up into a storm I could no longer ignore. I needed proof, something concrete, not just intuition or tiny hints. I needed evidence. It started with the old diary. I had been helping Sophie clean out more boxes in the apartment when I noticed a leather-bound journal tucked under a pile of textbooks. It wasn't locked, just worn and slightly frayed, like it had been carried around for years. I hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was small, neat, and familiar. My pulse quickened as I flipped through the pages. It was filled with childhood memories, birthday parties, first days of school, holidays. But buried among the innocent entries were fragments that made my stomach twist. Names of towns I knew, details about a family I recognized, and small anecdotes that mirrored my own childhood exactly. I froze when I reached a page that described a visit to a house with a woman named Linda who reminded Sophie of someone she couldn't quite place but felt like home. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just coincidence anymore. And then I found it. A set of adoption papers slipped between the pages. My breath caught in my throat as I read the details. The child's original name, date of birth, and the woman listed as the biological mother. My mother. I dropped the papers onto the couch, staring at them in disbelief. Sophie was my sister. Everything made sense now. Every odd coincidence, every shared habit, every memory that seemed too familiar. Sophie wasn't just my best friend. She was family. My family. I felt a rush of emotions: shock, anger, confusion, fear, and something like betrayal. How could my mother hide this from me all these years? How could she let me live side by side with my own sister without ever telling me? And Sophie, had she known? Or had she truly been as unaware as I had hoped? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch holding the diary and papers, watching Sophie in the other room laughing as she chatted on the phone. The realization hit me hard. I had to tell her. I had to confront her with the truth. The next day, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Sophie and I had spent hours sitting in silence, the adoption papers between us like a silent, unyielding witness to the truth. We both knew that the next step had to be confronting the person who had hidden this from us all along, our mother. I found Linda in the living room, reading the newspaper as if nothing in the world had changed. My chest tightened, my hands trembling as I stepped forward. Sophie followed silently behind me, her face pale but determined. "Mom," I said, my voice firmer than I felt, "we need to talk. Now." She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Natalie, what is it this time? Another one of your late-night worries?" I took a deep breath, holding the adoption papers in my hand. This isn't a worry, it's the truth. Sophie, she's my sister, your daughter, and you've been hiding it from us all these years. For a moment, my mother just stared at us, her expression unreadable. Then, her face hardened and she laughed, a short, sharp laugh that made my blood run cold. That's ridiculous, she said. You're imagining things. Natalie, stop it. Sophie is your friend, that's all. Don't let your imagination run wild. I felt my anger flare. Stop lying, Mom. I have the papers. I have the diary. I have proof. Don't you dare try to twist this. Sophie's eyes were wide, staring between the two of us, her hands trembling. Mom, is it true? Did you hide me from her all these years? Linda's eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, guilt, desperation. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. I did what I had to do. You don't understand. Your father, the family. It was complicated. I was trying to protect everyone. Protect everyone? I shouted, my voice cracking. You hid your own daughter from her sister. You let us grow up in the same city, in the same life, without knowing the truth? How is that protection? Sophie's voice broke in, trembling with emotion. Why, Mom? Why would you do this to me, to us? Linda's face crumpled, a mask slipping to reveal the woman beneath, the mother who loved in her own flawed, desperate way. I was young. I made mistakes. I thought I was doing the right thing. I never wanted either of you to be hurt. I thought I was protecting the family. I felt tears sting my eyes, a mixture of rage, sorrow, and disbelief. You destroyed our lives for your version of protection. Do you even understand what that means? We could have had each other all these years, and instead, we were strangers pretending to be best friends. Linda sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Sophie and I stood, silent for a moment, the weight of years of lies pressing down on us. The truth was finally out, and yet it didn't bring relief. It brought more pain, more questions, more anger. Finally, I spoke, my voice low but unwavering. Mom, we need to fix this. Not you, not us, both of us. We need the truth, all of it. No more secrets. And if you can't tell us everything, then we'll find it ourselves. Linda didn't respond. She just sat there, silent, her shoulders trembling. The house felt colder, heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Sophie reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, the reality hit me fully. This was my sister, my family, the one person I had been closest to without even knowing it. And together, we would face the woman who had tried to keep us apart. But even as I held her hand, I felt a shiver of unease, because confronting the past was only the beginning. There were more secrets, darker ones, that my mother had buried, and I knew without a doubt that they were coming to the surface. And I wasn't sure if any of us would survive what came next. After the confrontation with Mom, the apartment felt different, heavy, charged. Every corner seemed to hum with unspoken words and buried emotions. Sophie and I didn't speak much at first. We sat in silence, letting the reality settle between us like a thick fog. Finally, Sophie broke the silence. Her voice was small, hesitant, almost afraid. Natalie, I think I might have known in some way. I mean, sometimes things just felt off, like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't see. I looked at her, shocked. You suspected? She nodded, biting her lip. Not fully, but there were little things. My adoptive parents, they never gave me much information, and I always wondered why some of my memories, my first memories, felt so familiar, like I'd lived them before. I felt my chest tighten. You never said anything. Why? She shrugged, tears welling in her eyes. I guess I was afraid. Afraid that if I said something, it would ruin what I had. My life. My friendship with you. I didn't want to lose you, Natalie. Not like this. The words hit me harder than anything. I had spent years thinking we were just best friends, but in reality, she had always been more than that. She was my sister, my family, and we had been blind to it all along. We spent hours talking that night, sharing stories from our childhoods that now took on new meaning. Memories I thought were mine alone were hers too. Every laugh, every tear, every small habit we shared suddenly made sense. And yet, despite the relief of finally knowing the truth, a shadow lingered. The anger at our mother, the years we had lost, the betrayal of a life built on lies. It wasn't gone. It was simmering beneath the surface, waiting to boil over. Over the next few days, Sophie became withdrawn at times, as if she were processing a lifetime of emotions all at once. She'd stare off into space, clutching the bracelet I had found, and whisper things under her breath that made me shiver. I, I don't even know who I am anymore, she said one evening, voice trembling. Everything I believed, everything I thought I knew about my life, it's all a lie, and I don't know if I can trust anything anymore. I sat beside her, taking her hand. You can trust me, Sophie. I'm here. We'll figure this out together, I promise. We're sisters now, and nothing, no lie, no secret can take that away. She nodded, but the uncertainty in her eyes didn't disappear. I realized that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Our bond had been built on friendship, but now it had to survive the weight of betrayal, the ghost of years lost, and the truth of our family's secrets. And then came the moment that made my stomach drop. A letter arrived in the mail addressed to Sophie. She hesitated, then opened it, and her face turned pale. What is it? I asked, my heart racing. Sophie didn't respond immediately. She just handed me the letter, her hands shaking. My eyes scanned the words, and I felt the blood drain from my face. It was from her birth parents, or at least someone claiming to have information about them. The letter hinted at more secrets, things our mother hadn't told us, things that could change everything we thought we knew about our family. I looked at Sophie, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Natalie, this isn't over. There's more, so much more. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I knew in that moment that our lives had been irrevocably changed. The truth had been uncovered, yes, but it was only the beginning. Because with every secret revealed, another one waited in the shadows, ready to explode. And I had a sinking feeling that the next revelation wouldn't just shake us, it would shake everything we thought we knew about our family, our mother, and ourselves. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to sense that something had shifted. A week after Sophie and I uncovered the truth, my mother decided, somewhat reluctantly, to host a small family gathering at our house. I think she thought if everyone saw us together, nothing could go wrong. She was wrong. The house was buzzing with chatter when my father arrived, followed by my older brother Jason. They both smiled politely, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Sophie and I sat together, side by side, sharing silent glances, both bracing for the inevitable. My father's voice broke the tension first. So, what's going on between you two? You look different, happier maybe. I forced a smile. Just catching up, that's all.
But Jason's eyes narrowed, studying Sophie like he was sizing her. "You've been living with Natalie, huh? How long?" 6 years, I said, my voice steady, though my hands clenched in my lap. Jason smirked. "Funny, I feel like there's more to this. You two look closer than friends should be." The words hung in the air like a challenge. I swallowed hard. The truth had to come out eventually, and I realized now was as good a time as any. "Sophie isn't just my friend," I said, taking a deep breath. "She's my sister, my biological sister." The room went silent. The chatter died. Forks paused in midair. Sophie's hand found mine, trembling, as all eyes turned toward our mother. Linda's face went pale, and for the first time in years, she looked small, almost fragile. "Natalie, that's enough," she said, her voice tight, strained. "You're making a scene." I shook my head. "No, Mom. It's time everyone knew. I found the papers, the diary, the proof. Sophie is your daughter. She's my sister, and you've been lying to us for years." Jason laughed, sharp, incredulous, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Wait, what? You're saying Sophie's Natalie's sister? Are you serious?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "It's true. Mom, why didn't you tell me?" Linda's shoulders shook. I was trying to protect you. I didn't want anyone hurt. It was complicated. I thought I was doing the right thing." "Complicated?" Jason scoffed. "You ruined lives. Natalie, Sophie, you two could have known each other years ago. Do you have any idea how messed up this is?" The tension in the room was suffocating. My father tried to intervene, but the damage was done. Old resentments, long-buried jealousies, and secrets we didn't even know existed began to surface. "I can't believe you kept this from us. Years of friendship, family dinners, holidays, all built on lies." Sophie's hand tightened around mine. "We've lost so much time." And that's when the first real betrayal came to light. A distant relative who had been listening quietly in the corner spoke up. Her voice was low but cutting. "Linda wasn't the only one hiding things. There are other letters, other secrets, not just about Sophie, about the family, about the money, the inheritance, and who's really entitled to it." The room froze. I felt my stomach drop. What else had been hidden? What else were we about to discover? Linda's face paled further. "That's enough," she shouted. "You don't understand." But it was too late. The walls were shaking with years of secrets, lies, and betrayals, and I realized with a sinking feeling that the family gathering had just opened a door we couldn't close. Sophie and I exchanged the glance. This wasn't just about finding each other anymore. This was about surviving the fallout from years of deception and discovering just how deep the betrayals ran. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that the next revelation would be even more devastating. After that explosive family gathering, the atmosphere at home became unbearable. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, sharp glances, and the tension of secrets waiting to explode. Sophie and I retreated to my room, needing space to process everything. "I can't believe this," Sophie whispered, pacing. "All these years, and there's more? Other secrets? Inheritance? What does that even mean?" I sank onto the bed, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. Mom hid Sophie from me, and apparently there's more she's hiding about the family fortune, about who really deserves what. And if she's been lying all these years, I want to know why." We decided to start with the old family safe. It had always been locked, its contents a mystery. My mother claimed it held only old documents, but something in my gut told me there was more. And sure enough, when Sophie and I forced it open one evening, we found stacks of letters, financial documents, and most importantly, a handwritten will that had never been mentioned before. The will was shocking. It named my father as the executor and left substantial assets to a child, born but given away, referring to Sophie, except it had never been executed. Our mother had hidden it, ensuring Sophie received nothing. I felt my blood boil. She's been lying to both of us for years, and now she's trying to steal Sophie's inheritance too? I said, my voice low but trembling with rage. Sophie's eyes were wide, tears forming. I can't believe this, Mom. How could she? Why would she do this? It's all part of the control, I said grimly, keeping us in the dark, making us dependent, keeping power over our lives. But not anymore. We're going to take what's ours, and we're going to do it on our terms.
Over the next few days, we started gathering evidence: bank statements, letters, legal documents, anything that proved my mother had deliberately hidden Sophie from her rightful inheritance. Each discovery fueled a fire inside me I didn't know I had. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was tangible, and it demanded action. And then came the subtle threats. One evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging. Some truths are dangerous." My heart raced. Was it my mother warning me, or someone else in the family who had been part of the cover-up? Sophie and I locked eyes. "We can't stop now," I said firmly. "We've come too far. Whatever secrets they're hiding, we'll uncover all of them." That night, as I lay in bed, my mind spinning with plans, I realized the stakes were higher than I ever imagined. This wasn't just about uncovering family secrets or claiming an inheritance. It was about exposing lies, taking revenge for years of manipulation, and finally reclaiming control of our lives. And I knew, when the moment came to confront my mother and the rest of the family, we would strike back with everything we had. Because betrayal had a price, and we were ready to collect. After days of planning, Sophie and I finally felt ready. We had gathered the evidence, documented every hidden letter, every forged signature, and every lie that had kept Sophie from her rightful inheritance. Now it was time to turn the tables. We decided to confront the family during another gathering. This time, a dinner that Mom insisted on hosting under the guise of making amends. The house was decorated with candles and flowers, trying to mask the tension, but we didn't care. Tonight, everything would come to light. As guests arrived, I could feel the electricity in the air. Old family members, distant relatives who had always whispered behind our backs, all unaware that the night would change everything. Sophie and I exchanged the brief, silent glance. The plan was simple: expose the lies, reveal the hidden inheritance, and watch the family scramble in disbelief. Dinner began, polite smiles and small talk filling the room. I let my mother take the lead, speaking confidently as if nothing had happened. But I knew she was sweating under that calm facade. And then, mid-meal, I stood. Sophie followed. "I have something to share," I announced, my voice steady and loud enough to carry. The room went silent. "It's time everyone knows the truth about our family." Mom's face went pale and my father's hand clenched around his fork. I continued. "Sophie isn't just my best friend. She's my sister. Our mother hid her from us, and now we have the proof." I handed the adoption papers across the table. Sophie's eyes glistened with tears as she added, "And it doesn't stop there. Mom also hid the will, the inheritance that rightfully belongs to me. But we found it, and we're taking the steps to claim what's ours." The room erupted in chaos. Shouts, gasps, and accusations flew across the table. Jason slammed his hand on the surface, his face red with anger. "You can't be serious. Mom would never do that." Mom's voice cracked. I did it to protect you. All of you. You don't understand." I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Protect us? You destroyed our lives. You played God with our happiness, our futures, and our trust. And now it's time to pay the price for your lies."
One by one, the relatives began speaking, revealing the extent of Mom's manipulations. Accounts hidden, favors granted in secret, whispers of jealousy and betrayal that had festered for years. Every revelation cut deeper than the last, exposing a web of deceit that had controlled our lives for decades. Sophie and I watched, a grim satisfaction building inside us. The betrayal had finally been exposed. The family's power dynamics shifted under the weight of truth, leaving Mom vulnerable, isolated, and forced to face the consequences of her actions. By the end of the night, the house felt different. Not just tense, but unbalanced. Secrets had been revealed, lies had been unmasked, and for the first time, Sophie and I felt the power shift in our favor. And yet, as we looked at each other across the room, a realization settled over both of us. This victory, as sweet as it felt, was only the beginning. There were still more truths to uncover, more betrayals to expose, and more revenge to take. Because in a family built on lies, no one could be trusted. And the ones who thought they had control were about to learn the hard way that power, like betrayal, always comes with a price. The days after the dinner were surreal. The house felt different, quieter, heavier, and strangely empty. The family had been rocked to its core, their carefully constructed world of lies shattered. Sophie and I had done what we set out to do: expose the betrayal, claim her inheritance, and take back control. But the emotional fallout was far from over. My mother, once untouchable, had become a shadow of her own self, withdrawn, guilt-ridden, and constantly watching us, as if waiting for us to forgive her. And none of us were ready to. Sophie and I spent hours talking, planning, and reflecting. We were no longer just best friends. We were sisters, bound by blood and by the battles we had fought together. But we also knew that trust had to be rebuilt, not just between us, but within the family. And then came the final piece of revenge. My mother had always tried to control every aspect of our lives, from friendships to finances. Now, armed with the truth and the evidence we had collected, we turned her own tactics against her. We arranged the meeting with the family lawyer, presenting the will, the adoption papers, and additional evidence of financial manipulations. The lawyer confirmed everything. Sophie's claim was legitimate. Her inheritance was secured, and Mom could no longer interfere. When we told her, her face crumbled, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She had spent decades controlling our lives, and now the power was gone. Sophie and I didn't gloat, but we didn't need to. The victory was in the silence, in the shift of balance, and in the undeniable truth finally being acknowledged. Sophie hugged me that night, tears streaming down both of our faces. I can't believe this is real, that we're really sisters. I held her tightly. It's real, and nothing can ever take this away. We'll face whatever comes next, together. In the following weeks, life slowly returned to a new normal. Mom tried to make amends, offering apologies and explanations, but Sophie and I had learned a lesson. Forgiveness is earned, not demanded. We chose our boundaries carefully, keeping her at an arm's length while we rebuilt our own bond. And as for the rest of the family, the power dynamics had shifted irreversibly. Lies could no longer protect anyone. Secrets no longer held sway. And the ones who thought they could manipulate and control were about to learn the hard way that karma has a way of catching up. Sophie and I finally sat together one quiet evening, looking through old photo albums and laughing at memories that once felt like they belonged to someone else. We were sisters, yes, but also survivors, warriors of our own story, reclaiming what was stolen from us. And as I looked at her, I realized something. Revenge had been sweet, but the real victory wasn't in punishment. It was in truth, in finding each other, in finally living our lives on our terms. Because no matter what the past had taken from us, the future was ours to write. And for the first time in years, I felt free.